The date is October 10, 1988, and I'm Miles McCarry speaking to you from the ringside of World Dairy Expo at Madison, Wisconsin. With me here visiting at the ringside is Wally Lindskoog of our Linda Holsteins, Turlock, California. Wally is pretty well known as a Holstein breeder coast to coast, you might say internationally, and on top of that, he was Purebred Breeder of the Year, Dairy Shrine, back in 1977. Wally, I think we should start off today by apologizing for waiting 11 years to get you on tape, but we had to wait for the machine to be invented and developed and so on, so we'll take it from there. Now, first question. I happened to be looking at the sire summary, the USDA sire summary, just the other day, and this is the most recent sire summary, and the two top bulls on the list are Erlinda bulls, bulls which you bred. And this is nothing new. You've had a lot of bulls up on that list since I've known you, which is quite a few years. Tell us a little about your basic philosophy on breeding. How much attention, how much stress have you put on milk? And then we'll go a little farther.
Let's start out by saying that truth is patient, and you apologize for not getting back to me. I mellow with age, so you did well by waiting before you got to me.
What makes you think that wasn't planned?
Anyhow, I believe that over 90% of the bills are paid in the dairy industry by milk chicks. Therefore, the commercial end is who I choose to serve. That doesn't mean I don't like to come to these shows and see fancy cattle. It means that I would like to breed the kind of cattle that make the most profit for the commercial man. Therefore, production, profitable production, is my main goal.
That's what pays the bills. Now let's go a little farther since we are on the ringside. I think it's rather nice that we're at a show today and get your opinions on this. How do you breed for type? How much stress do you put on type in your herd?
When it comes to type, I'm kind of a rebel. I've found it easy with my personality to go cross grain. And because something is popular, doesn't make any impression on me, it has to work. And the show kind of type did not work the hardest or be the most profitable to the commercial segment. That's why I have ceased to do that kind of thing. I have shown in my youth, you know.
I was young back then too, I remember that. But tell me this, you go along on this, you're saying that we shouldn't just go out and have a scorecard and tell a cow, here is what you should look like, girl. We should let the good cow tell us what she should look like?
I know a lot of great men in this dairy industry, and I don't know one of them that has the ability to tell us what the cow is supposed to look like. We must have enough humility. I find that a little hard to find sometime myself, but the cow must tell us, and we have to be silent and listen, and she'll tell us by her profitability to the big, well-run commercial man.
Now we'll go just a step farther on this. Let's get a little bit on cows by characteristics. You all long have had a thing, I guess you call that, on rumps. And we've come to the point in your development or our development, we call something a Lindskoog rump. It's a rump that slopes a little from the hooks to the pins. Tell us a little about that.
I don't think you should stop at hooks and the pins, because what I would like to have, and nature had it that way 60 years ago when I started, and I admit to you I listened to the wrong people on that. This doesn't help it out here. But God intended for all species, and if you go to Africa where man has not tinkered with it, you'll find them drain the vagina outward when they're standing. And it's not hooks to pins that does that. It's thurl joint to pins, that little shelf of bone there that the vagina and uterus lies so neatly in when they're virgins. When they calve, it hangs down over. I grant that a uterus that's full of pus drains only when they lie down. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, do you want the urine drippings to drain in or out when they're standing? And the older they get, the more important that is.
Let's dot one I and cross one T. You say in Africa where man has not interfered, we're not talking about Holsteins per se, but about buffalo, am I correct?
We're talking about all species. After I made my trip there, I was non-negotiable on the subject because I saw how God does it. And the lions cull them there, and if they don't have that rear end right, they can't back up quick or go sideways quick, and the lions eat them. And they have to lie down, have their offspring quickly, and fight off the lions. And I want the kind that can reproduce. That's part of the profit.
Absolutely. You're tying this in then to easy calving as well as drainage after calving and so on, right?
One breed of cattle has the two things I have failed on. calving ease and protein. And you know it's jerseys. I'm not selling jerseys today, but before I die, I've asked God for enough years to help those two things in my breed, the Holstein cow. She's been good to me, you know.
Yeah, I guess we could say that. Now let's just go another step on this business of type by characteristics. Thing I've always think of in association with you is you coined a term which I have used quite frequently over the years. That's flattery, I guess. And this term is dairy strength. Now, would you just explain that a little bit as compared to dairy character, the term commonly used?
The angularity word was misused pretty badly through our Red Book for years. They had an angularity line and had coarse and sharp as the opposites. And I submit to you, sharp means skinny to most inspectors, most classifiers. The opposite of coarse is refined, not sharp. Neither of which has anything to do with angularity. They have now changed it, so we're making progress. And I say, talk in parables. The Lord did, and I don't know how to choose enough words to get the message across, but we have a big mountain to climb. We have an overloaded truck. We've got to have a big engine. And not only an engine, you got to have a big fuel line. And in our business, appetite is the fuel line. The chief blood has that. And it doesn't do you any good to put good udder characteristics on if you don't have a good engine to keep them healthy and can pull them up. I could name some bloodlines that don't have it. I happen to, have been blessed with our Linda Chief, and he has that ability.
I won't make no comment on these other bloodlines either, okay?
Okay.
But let's go back to our Linda Chief. As you may recall, I knew the bull pretty well, too. And he started a lot of strength up the front. Broad-chested, deep-hearted cows. In fact, Ted Kruger, who's now a pioneer and been shrined that way at Dairy Shrine, thought for a long time that those heifers weren't going to milk much. He thought they were too strong to milk. And, of course, you fooled him on that. What about that?
Everybody thought so, including our Linda. They looked like they'd make good beef cows. But our Linda Chief proved to the whole world, I believe, that you could have big power, constitution, substance, still milk way more than herd mates, and have a very high test with it. I wish that blood had a little higher protein.
Well, we generally think of a great production bull in terms of his daughters, but Chief has done something that very few of them have done. He has come up with a lot of plus-proven sons, sensationally plus-proven, you might say. I suppose you could fill us in a little bit about that without getting into too many details. This strength has been imparted through a lot of the breed through his sons. Is that about right?
Yes, and I do think you better get the front end of the cow first. There are many bloodlines that have beautiful udders that don't have enough motor in there to keep everything going. Our matings that we do at home, and I believe in the corrective matings, much more than anything else, get the motor right first, the constitution, the good power. And then I would like to have reproduction next, because that's a big part of the profitability. You'd be surprised the culling rate due to bad reproduction. And you can move that udder around the way you want it. I find that the easiest to do.
Now, one thing more on this business of type and dairy cattle. You're talking about dairy strength. This does not preclude the ability to turn flesh into milk and so on, but it does include, I would say, the ability to produce a lot of milk plus the strength to do the work. Is that about right?
I want a cow that puts on weight readily. That's appetite when she's not milking, and puts it right in the pail when she's milking. And I prefer the deep belly, the slanting rib, the angular. The Chiefs, nobody studied them. They thought they were beef cows. They weren't. They had angular ribs.
They certainly did milk. No angle about that at all.
Yep.
Now, one other thing I would like to ask you here, Wally. It's a good choice of words, by the way. One thing I would like to ask you here about this whole business is you have been in favor down through the years of breeding, you might say, extremes one to the other rather than breeding for... Is that about right? Can you explain your breeding program just a little bit that way?
I do not prefer extremes, but the big argument we have is that you can't get something good from two bads, and I look at it as a balancing. If you have too straight a leg, I want it to be mated to something just as far from center the other way, too much that way. But it would be better if you had it right in the middle all the time. Nobody gets it that way.
That's what I was trying to say, and I think I muffed the words on this business of extremes. You have had pretty good luck with this kind of a breeding system then.
It has been my best tool to try to do a good corrective mating job.
Now, a minute ago, you said that only one breed had surpassed you as far as protein goes. They'd gotten way ahead of you, and this being the Jersey breed. What do you see ahead for the Holstein breed as far as protein goes? You think this can be brought up from its present average of about, I guess, 3.6, 3.3, 3.6 protein? You think this can be increased in the years ahead?
I think out there where we get awfully heavy milk in hot weather, you do good to get 3.2 on a herd average basis. And we are sampling some sires, Secret for one, that has a pretty good track record of daughters on protein. I have found it very hard to follow through so far. We had a 3.8 protein cow, the full sister to Cinnamon. Her rotate son was just like the rest of them.
Now, one more question and we'll sign off here. The Linda herd has again been very famous, and you have accomplished tremendous lot with production. Now you're thinking protein. A lot of people say, but the flight of knowledge as of today, somebody looks at this tape in 1998, they'll probably think we're crazy. But as of right now, a lot of people say that protein content is pretty closely linked with butterfat content. Do you think this is true, that you could increase protein content by increasing fat test?
Not so.
Not so.
No. The bloodline way back that had kind of low test but good protein was 49er. Through his son Jetstream, it became known. And we don't need this fat, you know. We're all getting pretty fat. We
Speak for yourself, Wally.
we don't use up enough energy. So if the government wasn't buying our surplus fat, we'd have figured out how to merchandise it better. I don't believe in government in business. I guess you know that. I'm an old free enterpriser.
Seems to me I've heard that somewhere. I would like to thank you again for being with us. We've been visiting with Wally Lindskoog of our Linda Holsteins, Turlock, California, a Holstein breeder, you might say, who does his own thinking and who thought his way to become Purebred Breeder of the Year for Dairy Shrine in 1977. Speaking to you from the ring at World Dairy Expo in Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks a bunch, Wally.
Thank you.